So I want to talk about Star Wars, and not just Star Wars The Last Jedi. I want to talk about the entire state of Star Wars right now, including the entire sequel trilogy, not just episode 8 or even episode 7, but that will be discussed. I want to talk about kind of what, like, I've been thinking about this for the last few days about what people, think about what's going on with Disney Star Wars. Now, the thing about episode 8, no matter which way you slice it, whether you like or hate the movie, it's very polarizing. All right, that's it. You can't even argue that. It's been said a million times. Divisive, polarizing. Some people hate it, some people love it. Some people, loved Force Awakens. I did. Some despised it. They thought it was too much like A New Hope, which to me is a fair criticism, but I don't think a movie being too much like another movie, especially one that's really good, is a good criticism, because it's a criticism. Don't get me wrong, fair one, but it's also like, dude, A New Hope is sort of like the Hidden Fortress. Does that mean that A New Hope sucks? Of course not. Like, most movies borrow from other movies. So having somebody say that The Force Awakens sucks because it's too much like A New Hope, no, like, A New Hope's a great movie, so shouldn't you have at least a decent movie if you copy a great movie? You know what I mean? But that's neither here nor there. We're not talking about that. We're talking about kind of the perspective that people have on what Star Wars is now. And really, I think the perspective people have on Star Wars now is entirely based on that original trilogy. I want to talk about the original trilogy. The reality is that, and it's really hard to say this, but I think it's true. Even though Force Awakens and Last Jedi made a lot of money, tons and tons of money, billions, there's nothing that's ever going to really match the original trilogy. There's not. And I'll be very honest with you. If you're one of those people, and this is going to be a kind of a bold statement, but hear me out. If you really believe that Last Jedi is better than Empire Strikes Back, I question your knowledge of filmmaking, or your knowledge of, I'm not going to question you as a person, but saying it's the best one since Empire, fine. But if you say it's better than Empire, there's technical problems with Last Jedi that Empire never had, and tons of them. And that leads me to my point here. I think that what's going on with Star Wars is that we all grew up on that original trilogy: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. And I think when somebody says, I went into The Last Jedi with no expectations, I think that's complete and utter horseshit. Complete horseshit. You cannot go into a Star Wars movie that's coming out now without expectations unless you are a new fan. You cannot do it. If you grew up on that original trilogy, you're going into this movie expecting it to be at least a good movie. I'm not saying that you're going to think it's as good as the original trilogy, but people go see Star Wars because of the original 3 Star Wars movies, because of the original movie, A New Hope, or Star Wars, what it was originally called, back in 1977. So the idea of somebody saying, "Oh, I went into Last Jedi with no expectations and I loved it." No, you went into with expectations because you wouldn't have gone to even see the movie if you didn't grow up with the original trilogy, unless you're a new fan. We all grew up with that original trilogy. It doesn't matter how old you are. I would say the vast majority of Star Wars fans saw those movies first. Now, there's a lot of kids nowadays who started with the prequels and with the TV shows, not discounting them, but people within the ages of, like, let's say 20 to 50 probably grew up with those original 3 movies, and then we all went to go see the prequels, and many of us were disappointed in the prequels because the prequels failed to capture that magic that we grew up with watching the original 3 movies over and over and over again as kids. And I think the issue with the sequel trilogy is that, and this to me, this is how I really feel, like, I think that I'm starting to come to terms with the fact that there won't ever be a movie that's going to equal the original trilogy. Episode 1 didn't, Episode 2 didn't, Episode 3 didn't, Rogue One didn't, 7 didn't, and 8 didn't. I think Force Awakens came the closest, but also, like everybody says, it is a sort of copy, or a retelling, I guess, with the same kind of story beats as A New Hope. It played it safe. I'm not denying that one. But I think it came the closest. But also, you have to realize that another reason why it may have come off that way is because of the aesthetics of the movie. See, what Disney's doing with movies like Force Awakens and all these movies, Rogue One, Han Solo, is they're playing with the Star Wars aesthetics. X-Wings, TIE Fighters, Stormtroopers, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Wookiees. Lightsabers. This is stuff that was established in the original 3 Star Wars movies. So with the sequels and the prequels, you have to put aesthetics in there that remind you of the original films. Even the prequels had this. Even though the prequels introduced tons of new characters and new ships and new planets, you still had John Williams' score, the opening crawl, you had Jedi, you had lightsaber duels. It's Star Wars. It's the universe that Star Wars has built. So for somebody to say, oh, I saw Last Jedi with no expectations, that's BS. You can't be a Star Wars fan and not have some kind of expectation. But I think the issue is people didn't like Last Jedi, and there's plenty of reasons why they didn't. And people did like Last Jedi, but I think what's going on is I think we're trying to kind of recapture that magic we had when we were kids, and it's just not going to ever be like that again. And it sucks to say that, and what really kind of irritates me is that when you think about the state of Hollywood right now, there's really no reason as to why it can't be that good. Because here's the reality. Even though I feel like the original trilogy is amazing, it is. It's still something to where I feel like filmmakers nowadays, with the technology we have, with the very intelligent minds that are out there writing scripts and making these amazing movies that come out every year that are not Star Wars, I feel like making a Star Wars movie that is at least really close to the original 3 should not be this hard. I really don't think it should be this hard, in my opinion. I feel like there's enough talent out there in Hollywood, and also we have technology now in 2017, 2018 now, that is so much better than what George Lucas had in 77, where he had to build ILM from nothing, that I feel like aesthetically we could do a great Star Wars movie. Visually, we can make a movie that's a million times better looking than 1977 Star Wars, but they just haven't been able to really do that. And I think Rogue One probably was the best movie as far as visuals went, because it captured that aesthetic perfectly, I felt. Not the best movie as far as characters go, but the aesthetics were there. And I feel like if you take those aesthetics, that kind of grimy look of what Star Wars used to be, which was, again, very cheap movie. Star Wars cost $2 million to make. No movie even back then cost $2 million to make that was a blockbuster. None. Star Wars was super freaking cheap to make, and yet it looks amazing. Even to this day, it looks incredible. But yet, I feel like now we have so many amazing writers in Hollywood, directors who have learned from the past 100 or so years of cinema that creating a great classic Star Wars movie shouldn't be this hard. But why? Why is it so hard for them to make a movie as good as the original trilogy? Is it something to where the original trilogy was lightning in a bottle? It was the right elements. It was George Lucas's vision. It was Lawrence Kasdan's writing. Irvin Kershner's direction. It was the collaboration between George Lucas and his partners. A lot of people say that A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back are the 2 best Star Wars movies. Gary Kurtz produced them. He did not come back for Jedi. And the reality is that as good as A New Hope was, there's some bad acting in that movie. I mean, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher were not at their best in that film, I don't think. In fact, you could even argue that, I'm not even going to argue it. I think Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill in Last Jedi, a movie that I don't even like that much, were better than they were in A New Hope as far as their individual performances go. So what is the magic formula? Does George Lucas have to come back? I don't know. I don't know what it could be. Or is it one of those things where Star Wars is just a period piece? I'm using that word wrong. It's lightning in a bottle from a time period when movies were less nihilistic and more about true heroism. And I often wonder about this too, and I often feel like nowadays, outside of some really good comic book movies, the really good ones like Wonder Woman and Logan, that a lot of these movies coming out are kind of betraying what true heroism is. Like, I want Star Wars to be a story about heroes overcoming obstacles. And I feel like the sequel trilogy has not really done that too well. Rey is good at everything. She, I think, would be a much more interesting character if she had more obstacles to overcome, like Luke did. I've said that before in other videos. And I feel like the message is that she just had everything handed to her. And when you have a character that's like that, it's not going to resonate as much as Luke Skywalker did. And that's why so many fans are pissed at what Rian Johnson did to Luke in episode 8. I mean, you can't blame them for it. So I just wonder, like, what is is Kathleen Kennedy the one to blame here? Like, is she the one to blame? Is she changing the direction of Star Wars? Or is it just the entire film industry is no longer capable of doing a Star Wars movie that felt like the original 3, including George Lucas? Because as much as, the prequels are also polarizing, they're mostly disliked. But the reasons why they're disliked are, well, there's a lot of them, but they're different than the reasons why Last Jedi is disliked. The prequels were just a big mess. It was a very messy situation with the prequels. And I think that over time, people have accepted them a bit more, right? But there's still many problems with those movies. And I think the real problem with those movies is that the movies fail to have a true main character. This is supposed to be the story of Anakin Skywalker, but The Phantom Menace is really the story of Qui-Gon Jinn finding Anakin Skywalker. He's kind of the main character because Liam Neeson has top billing, but who is the main character in that movie? Anakin shows up halfway through. He can't be the main character. Obi-Wan doesn't do much till the very end, except for be Qui-Gon's, tag team partner. Padme Amidala is important, but she's not the main character. Then you look at episode 2. Who's the main character of that one? Could it be Obi-Wan and Anakin? Okay, that's fair. Obi-Wan has a pretty fun adventure in Attack of the Clones, and Anakin's a whiny little bitch in the movie. So you can't like Anakin. He's so unlikable in Attack of the Clones. Then in Revenge of the Sith, the main character, again, it's shared between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and they're split, but Obi-Wan does not get enough individual development. Obi-Wan does not really get his story told. We don't know anything about Obi-Wan except that he's a Jedi and that he's training Anakin. Where's his backstory? Where's his personal story here? It's all about Anakin, and he goes bad. So think about that. It's not like Luke's story. It's a jumbled mess of different characters doing different things, which I'm going to get into in a different video. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but that's been the issue with the prequels, that George Lucas didn't really know how to really tell that story. And I feel like if he had just focused on Obi-Wan and made Anakin a secondary character versus trying to split the time between the two, I think it would have made more sense that way. But I think no matter what, I'm just wondering to myself, are they ever going to capture the magic of the original trilogy again? To where it hits on so many levels. It resonates. Star Wars is about overcoming obstacles, about family, about finding yourself and your place in the universe. And I think that with Rey's character, they're trying to go for that, but they're not building enough of a connection between Rey and the audience for it to really resonate that much. People don't care about Rey the way they care about Luke. Some do, but not a lot of people even people who like Last Jedi don't care that much about Rey. In fact, Kylo Ren is the most interesting character in The Last Jedi, my opinion. He is. Kylo Ren is the most interesting character in the entire sequel trilogy. Because he's a Skywalker who is, again, confused. He's sort of like what Anakin was, but a little bit better. He's less annoying than Anakin was. But it's similar. It's a similar thing. So what do you think? I mean, is it possible for them to really recapture that magic? I feel like it is. There's enough people. Look at the MCU. Look at all these great movies that come out every year. Why can't one of those writers and directors come in and do Star Wars and knock it out of the park? Because I love Force Awakens, but I do agree with people that I want a Star Wars movie that's going to knock me out of the park that's not just a retelling of A New Hope. And it's getting harder and harder to realize that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Thank you. That's all I got for you. Comment down below and guide me into an answer here, because I don't even know what to say anymore. I'll talk to y'all then.